Good morning. Guess what day it is? It's November 26th, 2024. Couple of things going on today. It's National Cake Day. Yum. It's also Good Grief Day. Now that's not grief as in being sad because someone has left. It has to do with the Charlie Brown author, Charles Schulz. Growing up, he aspired to be a cartoonist, and at the age of 15, he sent one of his drawings to the Ripley Believe It or Not weekly column, which became his first published cartoon. From then on, that was his life. Thus, on October 1950, the Peanuts were born. Now, this is really interesting. I didn't know this. Peanuts, the cartoon, ended with Schultz's farewell announcement, published the day after his death in February of 2000. Schultz submitted the farewell, then he went to his room and he died in his sleep. That's sort of creepy, isn't it? It's like he knew. The main character in the Peanuts comic was Charlie Brown. Charlie Brown was very human indeed, just like us. You might not believe this, but Charlie Brown sort of makes me think of Moses in the Bible. I know you're thinking, how? So I'm going to tell you. When I think of Charlie Brown, I think of that football he was always trying to kick. You remember? He always runs to kick it and somebody pulls it out of the way. Well, Moses was born at a time when the Egyptian Pharaoh was afraid of the Hebrew or Israelites. Because they had prospered so in the land, Pharaoh was afraid that they would take over. So he told the midwives to kill all the baby boys when they were born. But the midwives wouldn't do it. Moses' mother, after he was born, hid him for 3 months and then put him in a basket in the reeds. Pharaoh's daughter adopted him, so he was raised in the palace. When he was grown, he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, and he knew that he was really a Hebrew, so he killed the Egyptian. In the New Testament, in Acts, this story is being related, and in 7:25 it says, "For he supposed that his brethren would have understood that God would deliver them by his hand, but they did not understand." So you see, this was the first time the football was in front of Moses. He thought he would deliver the people. You know, he was living in the palace. He was basically the adopted son of the Pharaoh, grandson of the Pharaoh, so he thought he would deliver the people. But in Charlie Brown terms, the football was going to be pulled out from under him, because the very next day after he killed the Egyptian, he saw 2 Hebrews fighting, and he tried to intervene. And they said, "Are you going to kill us like you did the Egyptian?" So Moses was afraid. Now he had to run for his life. So, no football. Couldn't kick the football. So he became a shepherd in another land, and for 40 years he was a shepherd. Then God called him and told him to go to Pharaoh and tell Pharaoh to free the people. So here's that football again. Moses will lead the people into the promised land, he thinks. And he goes to Pharaoh, and after many plagues, the people actually do get free. And they get all the way to the edge of the promised land. And they send some spies to see what the promised land is like. And then they get discouraged, and they get afraid. And they say, "We can't do this. The cities are fortified, and the people are giants, and we can't fight them." So God says, "You know, this generation will not go into the promised land. You can't go in the promised land. You're going to wander in the desert." So Moses got almost to that football, and then it was pulled away. So Moses, along with the people, wandered in the desert for 40 years. But then when it was getting close to time for the generation to have passed away and they'll be ready to go in the promised land, what does Moses do? Moses sinned. Moses disobeyed God. God told him when the people needed water to speak to a rock, and God would send water out of a rock. But instead, Moses took a staff and smote the rock. And so God said, because you did this, Moses, you cannot go into the promised land. So here again they were, him rushing toward this football, and it was pulled away. So Moses was not going to be able to go in the promised land. But you know, God did allow him to see it from afar. And, well, it sounds sad. Moses never got to kick that football. Charlie Brown never got to kick his football. Sometimes in our life, it seems like that there is a goal that we think we have for our lives, and maybe we don't reach it. And maybe it is something God told us to do. God told Moses to lead the children of Israel. But we have to decide that whether we actually get to kick that football or not, we're going to persevere. And we're going to continue. And we're going to walk in the way that God has for us, because God knows what is best. And His will is always the best. So today, continue to chase your football. And never give up. Either you'll finally get to kick it, or there'll be something better for you. Moses went on to be with the Lord. God knows what's best. Never give up on your football.